Missed any of those coupon codes? The parent website, the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, underneath the Money tab at the top of the page. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in our guest for this week.
Teresa Woodard is a writer and field editor for regional and national consumer magazines and their digital outlets. She is a contributing garden editor at Midwest Living magazine and an author to a couple books, including her most recent book, Garden to the Max. Welcome to the program, Teresa.
Thank you, Joey and Holly.
Well, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to not only educate Holly and myself, but all of our listeners.
So where did your love of gardening come from? Where did it begin for you?
For me, I think my love for gardening came from my love for nature. As a kid, I would love going hiking, and my parents just kind of turned me loose. In elementary school, I lived along this big woodland and would go and hike and see all the spring wildflowers. And then later in middle school, we moved in town, a small town, and the woman who had lived there for 70 years had planted all kinds of wildflowers in the backyard. And so I would press them and cut them. And today I still love wildflowers and grow them in my own backyard today.
Well, you are a field editor and for regional and national consumer magazines. What are you seeing as the trend for 2025 here? We kind of get a trend every now and then. We saw some during the pandemic. What are you seeing, if you are seeing, and what is it?
Well, it's really a continuation of a trend, but this whole trend of abundance and less about control, more about dense plantings and a wide variety of plants to support wildlife and biodiversity. And along with that abundance comes this, more creative, joyful expression, personal expression in the garden. People are being bolder, creating these gardens that bring them joy.
Now, we see this a lot with these plant companies that they breed this one to breed that. We get a special new rose or a special new this plant or another. In your personal opinion, do you think that has gone to a level beyond what it should be and we should just kind of stick with what we've got instead of trying to create new things?
No, I love all the interest that these new breeders are bringing. I think it generates excitement. I think, yes, there's all these wonderful classics, but if new plant introductions can bring new gardeners into the world, I'm all for it. I really am about promoting more gardening and more plants. I just think it's good for us mentally, and socially, but it's also good for our earth. So I don't think we can have enough.
And there's a certain level of that these breeders are seeing, like this particular disease or insect is eradicating this type of species. We can breed two of these together to repel or prevent that from affecting this new line, which some level is pretty interesting.
It is. I agree. And also just to help gardeners be more successful. I think new gardeners, it can be intimidating sometime. And if they go with some of these disease-resistant plants, it's going to ensure that they're going to be more successful. And that's good for everybody.
Taking the variables out that type of thing.
Yeah, I think it's pretty exciting, some of the new plants that are coming out. And many of them are doing it for ecological, they're breeding for ecological value too. They're testing which plants have more pollinator appeal now. So those kinds of things are all good.
Definitely very, very important. So your newest book, Garden to the Max, which looks absolutely beautiful and colorful and just very, very appealing visually. Can you tell us about it? What our listeners might pique their interest, something to gain interest? Just give us kind of an idea of what our listeners could expect when they pick up a copy.
Sure, absolutely. We're super excited about it, and it's a really bold, colorful book. Garden to the Max is in hot pink on the front cover. We even put a fifth color of ink to make it pop. So it's a very bold, colorful book. But it all started when I was noticing this maximalist style coming back in fashion and interior worlds. And in the magazine world, we think it's interesting when one area crosses over into another area, like home into garden or cooking into garden. And so I thought how interesting that this trend in interiors was paralleling what was going on with gardens as we were embracing a more abundant approach. And with this overlap, I thought maybe it would be fun to showcase how maximalism and this theme of abundance is playing out in the gardens. And my ultimate goal, was just to attract more gardeners. So maybe if there's interior people that love the maximalist style in their homes, maybe they would consider trying the maximalist style outdoors and growing more plants and ultimately getting us a greener earth.
So could you describe what the maximalist style is to people who don't know?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. I do get that a bit. So maximalism is the joyful opposite of minimalism. And instead of paring down, like with the minimalist style, you really lean in. And that can be translated with bold colors, vibrant color palettes, highly textural gardens, collections of things, like if you're a collector of succulents or a collector of tropical plants, layering different plants, and even in the, fashion world, it's layering different patterns. So that's how it is translated into the garden maximalism. It's sort of this more is more mentality.
Now, you are involved in the gardening world, as Holly and I are. And what have you seen to be the biggest piece of misinformation that gardeners continue to use over and over again, even though we've all told the gardeners there's no scientific to this, stop doing it?
Well, I think one of the biggest pieces of misinformation for gardeners, and it plays out a bit in this whole Garden to the Max, is that I think gardeners, especially new ones, are intimidated because you have to follow these strict set of rules, like plant spacing minimums or sticking to a strict color palette or only using natives. And I think all these rules can kind of intimidate or wear down gardeners to take away the joy of gardening. And I'd rather get people encouraged to try new things and break rules and experiment. And that's part of the fun and education of gardening, is the trial and error and not being afraid to kill plants because you learn something and it's part of the education. And I just want people to embrace the joy of gardening, the imperfections and the abundance. And I think Garden to the Max really encourages that creativity and showcases, some of these daring gardeners who aren't afraid to experiment and bend some of the rules.
Well, we've been told you're not a good gardener unless you've killed about 1,000 plants. So
absolutely. So true, Joey.
So I know you love visiting gardens, botanical gardens, etc., as do I. What is one of the most unique or memorable botanical gardens that you have visited here in the U.S., and what is something that makes it unique or memorable, or, if there's a few of them?
Yeah, there's a lot that I love, but I was thinking of one of the most recent interesting ones I visited. I was in California about a week ago promoting the book and visited the Ruth Bancroft Garden outside San Francisco. And Ruth Bancroft was a pioneer in her time, and she really experimented with a dry garden. And I was blown away with how beautiful a dry garden could be with different textures and shapes. And at the time I was there, so many of the succulents and cacti were in bloom, and it was just exquisite. And I thought, as we're experiencing more drought conditions in today's climate, it really opened my eyes to the possibilities of what a dry garden could look like and how beautiful it really could be.
It's amazing that in that Southwest area, how flourishing the plants can be with so minimalist amount of water that they're allowed to have by nature.
Yes. And one of the gardens in Garden to the Max, they would sow, handfuls of penstemon, and then it would just bloom, the sea of pink that they would have. It was in Tucson, and it was just so, and in several of the gardens they had, they would grow things by seed and just add another layer of planting by sowing seeds, filling in any areas where there's bare soil by sowing seeds. And it was just magical how it would weave the garden together.
Well, we greatly appreciate the time you've offered us, Teresa. How can people find out about you? How can they get your book?
The book is sold on all the major retailers, Amazon and Barnes and Noble, also small independent bookstores. It also is sold through our publisher, which is Timber Press. So there's lots of different ways. And if they want to follow along, I've made a lot of reels about the garden on Instagram and Facebook. You can find me at Teresa P. Woodard. And I have reels of 19 of the 20. So hopefully we'll get one more, and you can get a little sneak peek of some of these maximalist gardens.
Absolutely. Well, Teresa, thank you so much for the time you've offered, not only Holly, myself, but all of our listeners, and best to you.
Well, I'm very thankful, and I encourage you all to garden to the max this season.
Absolutely.